We have assisting me in the opining, my, if you will, titans of tumult, Amy Ridenhour, chairman of the National Center for Public Policy Research. Amy, good to have you back.
Thank you, Alan.
On board as well, Robert Weiner, Democratic strategist, columnist, and former communications director for Clinton drug czar General Barry McAfee. He's also a former communications director for Congressman Rangel and Conyers of New York and Michigan, respectively. Bob, good to have you back.
Alan, I am a talking tree, and Hitler is not for me. On health care for the poor, I shall take a wee-wee. On our economy, whoopee! I am Ted Cruz, and on this issue, I will lose. Dedicated to Alan Nathan and Battleline, whose show is so fine.
Oh, thank you so much. But first of all, you're mixing up your trochaic tetrameter and your iambic pentameter.
I did.
And jam mints need a lot of work, but we'll get to that at some other time. Bob, I'll tell you what, I'll kick it off with you. Currently, the CR language has changed, like within the last hour. Taken out is the year-long delay of Obamacare and repeal of the medical device tax, which actually has very strong bipartisan support, but we'll get to that in a bit. What's replaced it is the following: fund the government, delay the individual mandate, as Obama delayed the employer mandate, and remove the congressional exemption from Obamacare. But shutdown drama aside, Bob, the bill has a lot of problems, at least as it relates to the congressional exemption. This is a key problem for a lot of folks on Capitol Hill. They feel very, very embarrassed about this. The idea of letting Congress have a pass while the rest of us may not. A poll released, and we were just talking about this in the previous segment, a poll released by the Independent Women's Voice. Now, this was conducted by GEB International, and it shows that over 90% of Americans despise this congressional exemption. Now, if the GOP House follows through, as it seems they have, by attaching this cancellation to that otherwise illegal waiver, along with a delay of the individual mandate for a year, how could the Democrats oppose these things without looking as if they're slathering themselves in favoritism? Bob Weiner.
Well, first of all, I commend you on your knowledge of poetic strategies, Alan. That was very impressive to know the various versing and words and quantities. Okay, but now, getting to this, I watched the three news conferences today, the Democratic leaders, the Republican leaders, and Obama's. I think Steny Hoyer, the House Democratic number 2, about a straight bill that allows 6 weeks of a timeout, guys, everybody go to your rooms, is really the way to go, because they are not going to get at Obama's health care bill. They are simply not. And a point I made to Steny at a party he had over this weekend is that Republicans always forget that 15 to 18% of the support of the opposition to Obamacare is support for a stronger single-payer bill. When you add that in, health care has a majority.
No, but you can't claim them as your numbers then. Obamacare can't claim those as its numbers. All that shows is that not only are they ticking off their opponents, but they're ticking off many of their own base, because the failure is measured in the absence of consensus. Therein lies the failure. You referencing people who wish it were even more left, that doesn't double as approval for the bill. Don't forget the unions in the form of the Teamsters and the AFL-CIO. Amy Ridenhour, my understanding is these unions feel that this particular law is a betrayal to them. They've even come out in letters to both Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid saying, you promised us that if we like our doctor and we liked our insurance, we'd be able to keep it. This law takes it away from us. You also promised that it would not affect working hours. We find that now the 40-hour work week is going to the wayside. Instead, companies are incentivized to either A, let people go, or B, reduce their work hours. This is all from left-wing based unions, nobody from the center, nobody from the libertarian, nobody from the conservatives. Amy Ridenhour.
Yes, you said that very well, Alan, and the bottom line is that the Obamacare is hurting workers, and the unions are seeing that first, naturally, and so are individual workers. Where we are now on Capitol Hill, however, is this. The Republican House has said, or will in a few minutes, has said that they want to delay the individual mandate, which effectively means if you don't have health insurance and you don't buy it next year or buy next year, you won't be fined. So basically they're saying the American people won't be fined if they don't buy health insurance for 1 year. So, as you can imagine, that's not going to be unpopular with the American people. Fines are not particularly big next year, but nevertheless, people who can afford to have health insurance typically buy it. They're not buying it because of this fine. So number one, they're saying you don't get a fine for a year. Now, and that's really
Bob, by the way,
fair
Bob, what
because
is wrong with that?
fair.
Bob, if the employers, if corporate America is allowed to have a year reprieve before they face possible fines for noncompliance, why can't average citizens be afforded that same opportunity, Bob?
Well, let me point out what Ron...
No. Why can't Americans have the same opportunity as we're going to give corporate America? Why won't Obama let you and I have the same rights that he gives to corporate America?
That corporate delay is a 5%er, whereas the mandate is everybody else. And 61% of Hispanics support the bill, 31%, twice more.
Hey, if it's only 5%er, I guess then he wouldn't. Wait a minute, Bob, if it was no big deal, why did he give them the break?
If you want to learn something from today, one thing I did learn is that Hispanics are twice as uninsured as everybody else, and that's why the Republicans will lose forever.
You can't answer the question of double standard. You can't answer the question of a double standard policy. I mean, the president and House Minority Leader Pelosi and Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, they all insist that it's morally wrong for Republicans not to simply sign the continuing resolution, as well as later approving the debt ceiling increase, as Democrats so rule. I got to wonder, and I'm going to ask this question upon our return. I'm going to ask this question upon our return. Isn't it fair to say that by that measure, aren't the Democrats essentially asserting that the only permissible dissent is their own against others, and that the only legitimate leverage is when they have it to apply to others? At one point or another, you've got to stop being part of the do as I say, not as I do crowd, at least if you want to be taken seriously. You're listening to The Alan Nathan Show right here on the Main Street Radio Network. We're covering a number of things here. Mainly we're covering the prospect of a looming shutdown. Assisting me in the opining, old friends of the show, my titans of tumult, if you will. Amy Ridenauer, chairman of the National Center for Public Policy Research. Also on board, Robert Weiner, Democratic strategist, columnist, and former communications director for Clinton Drug Czar General Barry McCaffrey. Amy, to you, the president, and I was talking about this just before break, President Obama, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, all these folks are insisting that it's morally wrong for Republicans not to simply sign the continuing resolution, that it's morally wrong to not approve the debt ceiling increase without any leverage or attachments whatsoever, but that these things should be done as the Democrats so dictate. But I'm thinking, by that measure, aren't the Democrats saying that the only permissible dissent is their own against others, and that the only legitimate leverage is whatever they have when they want to use it? Your sense of it.
You're absolutely right. You'd have to be an airhead or a massive partisan to believe their argument. What they are precisely saying is that tools that the legislature has can be only used by the left. Now, yeah, the right would be stupid to go for that. I do believe some journalists have fallen for this, but as I say, they're either airheads or partisans. Let's point out something else that didn't come out in the last segment as well. The Republican House is doing two things, in addition to saying they'll fund the government till December 15th. One is to delay the mandate, i.e. take away any fines individuals would get next year if they don't have health insurance. The second thing they are doing is they are saying that the Vitter Amendment, which is the name out of the Senate, but it's an amendment that says that members of the White House staff, members of Congress, and congressional employees don't get a special deal under Obamacare. What happened was that when Obamacare passed, there was an amendment put in by Senator Charles Grassley of Iowa that said that it would cover Congress as well as the American people. Now, Congress doesn't like that. They have a nice health care plan, and they know they can't keep it if they go under Obamacare. Furthermore, it would cost them more money because they would have to pay more. So what President Obama did, just to avoid a little revolution in Congress, was and this isn't ethical, by the way, he doesn't have this authority, but he said basically that the feds would give extra money to members of Congress, their staffs, and White House staff, so that they could get Obamacare coverage without having to pay any more like all the rest of us. Now, this means, in a political sense, and in a fairness sense, if you work for Congress or the White House, you should be treated like a regular American. But from a political sense, it means that the Democrats, if the Republicans don't back down, are going to have to go to the mat on only two issues. They're going to have to go to the mat keeping the American people fined if they don't buy health insurance, and to make sure they and nobody else get special subsidies.
That's what I'm thinking, Bob. This is Yeah, this is what I think is going to be very hard for the Dems. If you have this continuing resolution and funding the government is contingent upon the Senate accepting the fact that Congress should be treated like everybody else, and also that the individual mandate should be delayed a year just as the president delayed the employer mandate, aren't the Democrats going to look as if they're championing a double standard unless they at least go along with these comparatively minor requests? Bob Weiner.
You guys are so funny. What you're doing, of course, is taking away health insurance for 40 million people. So here's what I want to propose.
Well, Amy, let Bob talk. Go ahead, Bob. Go ahead.
Here's the deal. I will agree to this deal, and I bet you all Democrats would if you would agree to it. If you're going to tie health insurance to this funding bill to keep the government going, how about at the same time you attach, instead of defunding Obamacare, what you claim you want to do, which is to have a substitute bill, health insurance for $40 million, cover pre-existing conditions, donut holes, lifetime, insurance capped at 80%. Oh, by the way, put in your tort reform and put in your interstate stuff that you always want to do, Alan. Put that bill in as a real substitute, include it in this bill, and then watch yourself get Democratic votes. It would pass. How's that deal?
It sounds like one that requires time to put together. I'm not adverse to going through it.
It's okay to just repeal and give nothing and take.
Whoa, Bob! You have no moral. Bob, you have no. Bob, you have no moral grounds there. You have no moral ground there because then you're giving a pass. You're giving a pass to the president to unilaterally exempt, as he has thus far. But now you have a problem when people put the mirror up in front of your face and say, this doesn't reflect well on you, Bob Weiner, when you seem to be saying that what goes for some doesn't go for others. Let me help people out with what's going on with the – I answered your point very, very directly. We're talking about the rudiments of math. I'm comfortable with having all these things debated. But your boss said no changes will be entertained.
I don't work for him, but okay.
The hell you don't.
All right. We'll have to then, if that's true, but okay.
But what I'm saying is that we're a very long way away from this man being acknowledged as having violated the Constitution by selectively applying law when he's not supposed to. But let me truncate this for people here. The shutdown drama aside, the problems with this bill is the unevenness of its implementation, again, such as letting Congress have a pass while the rest of us may not. Now, again, a poll released by the Independent Women's Voice conducted by GEB International shows that over 90% of Americans despise this congressional exemption. Now, if the GOP attach this cancellation to that illegal waiver, as they apparently have done, along with the delay of the individual mandate for a year, you got to wonder how the Democrats can oppose these things without looking like they're indulgently embracing favoritism. Now, here's the thing.
You want an answer
Let's look at the. I'll let you once you become a little more informed. Okay. Now, in defense,
I know about that provision.
In defense of the congressional waiver from Obamacare law, the Washington Post, Glenn Kessler, defends it, and he points out that, quote, neither Democrats nor Republicans clearly understood the implication of the Grassley Amendment when it was passed, unquote. In other words, Bob, because the law's amendment, as written, would have impeded subsidies congressional leaders and their staff had thus far been enjoying, when you think about it, this is what he's saying, it's only fair that the Office of Personnel Management let the federal employee health benefits still pay their 75% subsidy to these health exchanges, even though the law as written, Bob Weiner, even though the law as written failed to maintain that protected subsidy. Now, by this measure, Bob, aren't we witnessing how some groups are protected by what Democrats call drafting errors, while others are not?
Not a drafting. Let me give you the answer, the real answer, and I was a federal employee for 22 years. If you want to lose federal employees who get in their health insurance what good corporations give in their health insurance, take that away and you'll see an enormous brain drain from the best people coming into federal service.
How does that become the measure?
People in Congress and the White House, and they're the ones that brought us the legislation. Damn exactly. The people who caused this are going to have to pay as much as we do. Boo-hoo-hoo.
Who's the we? Who's the
Bob,
we, Amy?
Bob.
Corporations still provide health care. The
corporation.
Okay, you can tell over me.
It's very simple, Bob.
what you're forgetting, Bob, is that the
Corporations
Grassley Amendment,
provide what I'm describing.
the Grassley Amendment was passed so that they essentially would have to eat what they serve.
Yeah, but you got my point. You're asking the reason why it's sticking with the subsidy, because you have to match the private sector's Cadillac plans, or you're going to lose the best people in your.
Then it should have been included at the time it was written. It should have been included at the time it was
I don't
written.
disagree with that. I don't disagree with that.
Well, then that means you agree that it was wrong for Obama to alter it after the fact, unlike what he's willing to do with other Americans in this country.
I think keeping this, however he did it, keeping the 75% subsidy is how you keep federal employees.
No, we don't care. Bob, these are only people who work for Congress and the White House, and they never work for more than a few years anyway, and then they cash out or their boss goes out of
Well, I have
office.
22 years of it. That's not a few years.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to keep you both on for the following segment. I want to get into this a little bit more because this is the heart of what's driving a lot of Americans crazy. Bob thinks the new measure should be, the loss of personnel if we don't give to them that which we're unwilling to give to others. So Bob rationalizes a double standard by pointing to a measure that has no basis in reality.